because I'm curious, just outside of the podcast, like just you guys' thoughts as like smart people. What are your thoughts on how race played a role in the Brittany Griner situation and in people's response to her coming home?
Yeah, I've actually thought about this a lot, and I've been like, bombarding Khalil from go, and I don't think I don't know if you can sort of separate race from sexuality here.
Mm.
That I think that she's black and queer, and has always been sort of, you know, that combination, and just it didn't capture the public imagination. I mean, even like this sort of self-congratulatory stuff afterwards, like we've been pushing for this all along. I was like, no, you haven't. There has been just silence. But like, yeah, there's a war going on right now, and you can think of like Russia as our our adversary,
Nemesis, right?
and that there was not sort of like this public uproar. There was not this like, it's been 100 days, it's been 120 days, 140. I think it's very much a part of it, but I think it's both that she's black and gay.
Yeah. Well, this is one of the things that makes our show work really well, is because, to be honest with you, Ben was much more interested in it. I was a little bit more like, I think they've done the kind of obligatory news reporting. They've kept track of key moments in her processing, from being accused to getting a lawyer to the question about a trade and all of that stuff. So I will be completely honest and transparent. I didn't feel that there was a media blackout. And so that's the setup for this. The reaction to the actual deal, I'm like, these motherfuckers.
Thank you.
Like, that's, to me, I mean, Ben, I never said Ben was wrong. I just didn't feel it quite the urgency as he felt. But in the reaction to her coming home, and now this accounting for, well, what about this white guy and what about that white guy and how come they don't matter? I mean, that's the racism unleashed around this issue that only validates Ben's initial concerns.
I mean, had she been a blonde white woman, she would have come home earlier, but also there would have been a graphic at the bottom of the screen that counted down, like,
days.
Yeah, Kelsey in Russia, day 22.
It's interesting. I mean, Amanda, I wonder even if it was like a male athlete, and even you could say a black male athlete who was not the best. It doesn't have to be fucking LeBron James, but we're talking about someone kind of good.
No,
like
he's still
would
a
it
nigga.
capture? Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's so. This was. So
I think maybe
outside.
then there would have been much more black male uproar, right?
Yeah.
Like there would have been more about that. I mean, it really has been fascinating as well as just incredibly disheartening for me to watch, because there's so many opportunities in the intersectionality of the conversation to like go to, and instead it's like actually, I think, fractured people, right? Because you have people looking at it like, oh, she gay, this ain't my problem, and then you have, I feel like, white people like, oh, of course a black went to Russia and broke the law, she's gonna need to do the time, and I'm like,
oh, black.
Singular.
No,
but
the times around this story about basketball players who were still going to Russia to play, and it was like, I need to get my money, I need to make money, this is my only option. It was just kind of a wild story of like, one, the total absence of solidarity. Like, even at this point, damn, like I understand that and that's just like, I don't think you get away with that.
I can tell you part of that is, I think part of that is less of a lack of solidarity with Brittany and more of a lack of solidarity with America. Like this idea of like, oh, like Russia's at war with Ukraine and America's against it. I think black people are like, they ain't got nothing to do with me. Like,
right. Yeah.
Well, conservative, or conservative, that's somehow the enemy of my enemy, that somehow, because there's a Democratic administration, that somehow Russia's okay with us.
Right. Well, that's a great point. I wanted to just affirm. I love this notion of like a white blonde woman in the crayon on Fox News, like with days counting down. That is brilliant, because I think, to your point, that would have then politicized this issue such that there would have been way more pressure on the Biden administration And then there would have been like this crazy around the mulberry bush linkage between Hunter Biden and some conspiracy of silence with Russia to not bring Brittany Griner home if she was some white woman blonde. I mean, so in that sense, I think you're absolutely right. There's the double standard would be very, very striking.
What if it was Britney Spears?
She would have been back.
They would be like, no, she's crazy anyway. Remember when she showed
No,
us
because you know what? We got Brittany out of her conservatorship. We can get her out of Russia. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like. Go ahead.
There's another angle on this though, and it's one that I think Ben kind of mentioned it with conservatives, but so when Sandra Bland, and I want to say was killed,
I was going to
died
say,
in the,
what are you about to say?
clearly died in the custody
Yes.
of the police, just outside. I forgot the county name, but outside of Prairie
from
View
Chicago, yeah.
A&M University, where she was working. I
Mhm.
visited that campus a couple years after her death, and I talked to some of the students and faculty, and I said, you know, like, what was it like here in the wake of Sandra Bland's killing and death? And they said we were banned by the university from supporting student activism around this issue. And I was like, what? That's crazy. This is a historically Black university. Are you
Yeah.
kidding me? You know what the answer was? The reason why is
Funding?
because, and I quote, that woman had marijuana in her system.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, part of your point and Ben's point about conservatism is like Black people also bear some responsibility for the ambivalence, right, about this Black, gay, pot smoking woman, right, who, you know, who,
which
like,
is like,
cry no tears.
it's really just confusing to me how I think those are the same people who will admittedly say that the law in America is oftentimes swayed in favor of those who are not Black. The law is oftentimes thrown, like the book is thrown at Black folks. Like they can see that, but then in the smallest offense, they'll be like, well, it's your fault.
Right.
Like you earned it. It's your fault.
Yep.